Today I'm going to be showing you something that many of you would have seen and remember from a long time ago, because this was actually originally published, in 2014, and this is what was called the Mars traffic light. Now, it may not be a traffic light, but it's shaped like one, and the reason I called it that is because I actually didn't know what to call it at the time. I first published it. I've got the original video here, part 1. When I first published this back in September 2014, 22nd of September, I didn't know what to call it. So what I did, I asked my subscribers what they thought it looked like. And I had a little quick kind of naming competition, which went on for a day or two. And the first one to suggest traffic light, I think, was 250 Sabre. So initially, that's what I called it, because that was, I think, the best explanation for it. Other people had some good explanations as well, and that's what it was called. It doesn't mean it's an actual traffic light, it just means it looks a bit like one, and it does. And I'll play a little bit of this video now, very briefly, and it's only like 2 minutes long. I'll just flick through it. Here it is, and it's from Sol 753, and you've got all the information here. This address has changed now because they've changed the website. But basically, you've got this thing next to what looks like a part of a wall or some kind of structure here, because we've got some very straight parts like here. And then we have this. And it does have what look like lamps or round nodule-like structures on it. This was the original. There's the close-up of it. I've got it here also in some articles that were published a few days later, because what I did back then, I actually had a news agent. In other words, I had an agent who I'd send articles to, who would then send them to the press. And what I've done here, I've got the main image from this set here, which doesn't have anything in it apart from little pebbles and things, but you can see the part of the rover just here. So this stuff is small, okay? It's quite close to the rover. This image is a bit further away. We have what looks like some kind of buried or ruined structure or wall here going across, and then it goes off in this direction. So this is like a corner here, and then we have the traffic light object, okay? And we've got basically two round parts, a smaller round part and another round part on the end, which kind of curves round and comes down like this. You can actually see it better if you look at the clips I've got here, my original clips, and these are my original thumbnail images from the parts 1 and 2. Now this is the first image I had on part 1. Mars named this object, and then people like 250 Sabre and others came along and said it looked like a traffic light, and that got the most votes, or the most people said that at the time, so I called it the Mars traffic light, okay? So then I changed the cover to this. This was the first official cover, I suppose. This was about 2 days later. Then it started going viral. It started going viral fairly quickly in the first couple of days. And so I sent it to my agent, who then sent it to the press. And this was the original image, and a couple of days after that I did a part 2, because at the time also a very good Mars researcher called Will Ferrar from What's Up in the Sky 37 channel and group on Facebook as well, he also did a video about it, I think the day after or not long after I did, and he actually noticed something really interesting, that there is another object next to this which may be part of it here. Now it doesn't look very clear in the raw image here, but you can see that we have an equal sized roundish object just here, which just so happens to be exactly the same size as these on here, okay? So what he did is he cut this out and then placed it on here, and it fitted perfectly. So I did the same thing, okay? So some credit must go to Will Ferrar for this. This at some point probably ended up underwater. It may be in an object on a boat or a ship. It may have been part of a fence. It may have been a set of lights or something else. I don't know what it is. No one knows exactly what this thing is. Okay, but if you look at it round the other way, it's really interesting, which is why I spun it round. And in a minute, this will animate that other object, which looks like one of these round parts. Okay, this is the other part. Now I'll let you watch this. Now this will now animate onto here on the actual object. I cut it out, which is exactly what Will Ferrar did, and I thought that was great. And it is the same size and very similar in shape to the other parts of the traffic light object or whatever it is. And there we have a comparison, okay? And if you click on these, this will take you to part 1, and this one will take you to part 2. Now obviously part 2 is the one with the animation in it, but also shows more comparisons, which makes more sense. So part 2 is actually a better video, and it's only about 3 minutes long, okay? So that's what I recommend. And then obviously it got into the press. Now this was in a lot of newspaper articles, and I've linked them here, some of them, only some of the main ones, okay? It was even on Russia Today, it was on RT, it was in the Huffington Post and the Daily Mail and Spaceflight Insider, and then it was in loads and loads and loads and loads, hundreds of other smaller outlets as well, websites, and it was all over the place. But these were the main ones that got it started. Basically, if you get an article in the Daily Mail or the Huff Post or on the RT, then it will go viral, okay? That's how you do it. They do actually get my name right, which they didn't always, right? But I won't read through all this now. I'll just show you the bit where it mentions what I actually supposedly said about it, okay? The rock was spotted in the image by space video journalist Joe White from Bristol, who runs a YouTube channel called ArtAlienTV. Quote, I saw this one and thought, hang on, that looks a bit strange. I think it looks like a traffic light, which is what I said, right? And then, it's hard to tell how big it would be without any point of reference, but I would estimate it was about 12 inches. Maybe 12 inches, probably more like 8. But yeah, never mind. I posted it on the internet, and people said they thought it looked like a set of traffic lights too. Although some people did say it looked like a totem pole, right? True. And then there's a picture of a traffic light, there's the object there, there's the rover, okay? And it goes into more detail here, and then NASA said, it says here, NASA said it's most likely an example of Martian concretion, the process of compacting and hardening of a mass of matter, according to Discovery News, blah, blah, okay. Now, so that one, they were fairly honest, but what happened then, Huffington Post ran with it, and they changed the wording slightly, very slightly, and what they did is they actually said that I said something else, which I never said. And what they did effectively, in some of these articles, they said that I thought it was probably just a rock, which I never said. A, there's no speaking in the video, and if you read under the video what I actually said in the description, which is what I sent to my agent and then was sent to the press, it never says it's probably just a rock. I never said that, but a lot of the articles about this do actually say that. I actually think it may well be one of these, or part of a fence, or something like that, that may be on a ship or boat or structure, okay? Because we have these parts, like this, and obviously one of them's broken off. The top one's different, it kind of curls round. If you look at a cello, it's got this kind of round part that curls round at the top. So it's got an ornate top to it, right? You can click on these other articles and you'll find that there are discrepancies, and in some of them, I think in the this one here and the RT one, it says that I think it's probably just a rock. I never said that, okay? That's something I never said, and that is a perfect example of how newspapers will change the narrative back to what they think it should be by implanting false sentences or words or whatever to try and change the narrative, okay? Because these are not our friends, okay? And they're even less our friends now than they were 7 years ago. The flat material stops, there's a gap, and there's just sand there. So this thing may go right down. I don't know how far. And it really does look a bit like one of these. Some kind of electric fence, or a traffic light, or something like that, okay? Because concretion only happens on objects that are already there. Concretion cannot form on nothing. There has to be something there for it to form onto. In other words, there has to be a structure or some other kind of rock or some other kind of fossilized plant or something like that in the water for the concretion to happen. And then it gradually sticks to the outside and then builds up layers and layers and layers until you end up with a much more rounded, less detailed artifact. You get this with cannons. You get this with metal objects that are in shipwrecks. Cannons are a good one because they're so hard. They get covered in concretion and barnacles and all sorts of things, okay? And then when you crack the concretion off with a big hammer, inside you find a perfectly preserved cannon, okay? And I think that would happen with this. If you were to crack this with a blunt object, you would find that there's something hard and metallic inside, okay? So it's not very big. I would say it's somewhere between 4 and 12 inches, probably about 8, possibly 6 or 7, I don't know. So it's not very big at all. But a lot of the things on Mars are not very big. As I've said before, I'd already proved that there was life on Mars more than 7 years ago, probably 8 years ago, probably 9 years ago. But by this time, by 2014, towards the end of 2014, things were starting to come up in the press, and by the end of 2015, I'd had loads of things in the press, including the cannon and other things as well, all sorts of things, and what look like dead creatures and stuff as well. But now, the weird thing is, the press will not publish my work. Now, that's partly because I don't have an agent now. The agencies will not take me on and will not work for me for some reason. So they're trying to censor me. And when I do send stuff to the press, they very, very rarely print it now. So they're trying to censor me at that end. And then when it gets onto YouTube, when I put this stuff on YouTube anyway, they're censoring me as well. So I'm getting censored by not only by the press, but also by YouTube, but I'm also getting censored by members of my own family. They sort of laugh, they laugh and joke about these things, but I know they think I'm a bit crazy. And I know I've had a lot of people contact me who say their family treat them the same way about these things, but these things are not just rocks, okay? And you can demonstrate that. This is not a rock. Rocks do not form these symmetrical shapes. They don't have symmetry, they don't have straight edges like this, they don't have parts like this. But this may well be a bulb or something inside, and that goes over the top of it like a cover. Back in the day, this made quite an impact, and was one of the reasons I was asked to go on Ancient Aliens back in the day, a few years back. So this and a few other things like the cannon as well. But I did send them a lot of stuff. I sent, even back then, I sent them lots of stuff, and they simply refused to print most of it. And that object I just showed you, the traffic light object, isn't the best one. It's by far not the best one. It's one of them, but it's not the best one. I mean, this is the tank or cannon thing that was also in the press. I sent this to the press, and they refused to. I think only one outlet would print that. Mars Man and Woman. They wouldn't show that. They wouldn't show this. The humanoid mummy. They wouldn't show that. I sent that. They wouldn't show that. Okay. There's the traffic light, part 2. Part 1 has had a lot more views than that. But they printed that. Now, that's 2014. This is the same year. I sent that to loads of them. They wouldn't print this. I sent this out a couple of years ago. They wouldn't print that. I sent this a couple of years ago. They wouldn't print it. Okay? So a lot of these things I have sent to the press, and they would not show it, including this as well. This writing that Monty Williams found back in the day, right? This was actually found probably back in 2014 as well, or 15. Okay, so I sent them a lot of material, and including this one, which I didn't find. This was found by Aya Lawrence, the thing that looks like a mobile phone, okay? They wouldn't print that. So they only print things that they feel they can dismiss as something else, usually, okay? I sent them this thing from the moon, this massive diamond-shaped object, which is about a mile high, or 1,000 meters high at least. It's about 1 kilometer in size, almost, this thing. Thousands of feet in size. I don't know exactly how big it is, but it's very large indeed. And I've sent a lot of these moon things. They won't print them either, okay? So the press are censoring reality. They are manipulating reality with help from governments and government organisations like NASA, who call it everything either icy dunes or just erosion or concretion. They don't explain to you what concretion is. Concretion can only happen on something that's already there, and for it to be shaped like that, it has to have been shaped like that before the concretion, if you see what I mean. So concretion is just calcification and sediment that's landed on something and hardened, okay? Usually underwater, but it can happen in open air as well, okay? But it's much more effective and happens more rapidly underwater, where the sedimentary minerals and stuff stick to the object and cover them in this kind of fuzzy material, okay? So there we have it, the Mars traffic light, one of the most important finds, I think, and has been ignored largely since, but it did make an impact. It may have changed the narrative. A lot of these finds they got in the press, they were kind of ignored by a large number of people, of course, as these things always are. But NASA are now coming out with all sorts of stuff about UFOs and UAPs, or whatever they want to call them, unidentified aerial phenomena, okay? I started calling them that many years before they did, so I don't know where they got that from. They are promoting fear over UFOs now, and it's absolute BS, most of it. If there was a threat to us, they would have gotten rid of us already, okay? UFOs have been around for a very long time, at least since the 1940s, but if you go back properly, they've been around for many thousands of years, going right back to caveman times, 40, 50,000 years ago, okay? They're shown in cave paintings, they go right through artwork and through stuff in the Middle Ages. You've got Alexander the Great spotted flying shields in the sky when he was invading India thousands of years ago, around 300 BC, 330 something BC, whatever, and then we have them appearing in artwork all through the Middle Ages, on coins, in paintings, in artwork, religious artwork. They're in the Bible, they're in all the religious books around the world. And then they are appearing not only in World War II, but they also appeared in World War I. Baron von Richthofen is actually quoted to have said that he chased a UFO in World War I and shot at it, and may have even shot it down, okay? Because he had explosive shells in his guns, and it may have actually shot it down. So some of these things have probably been recovered in the last 100 years or so, and have been reverse engineered, okay? And now NASA and people like Louis Elizondo, who's a complete disinfo agent, who used to work for the CIA. He was basically working in counterintelligence. Now, what that really means is you make up disinformation and then plant it in the press, you plant it out there in the media. That's what they do. Counterintelligence deliberately plant false information to throw people off the scent, okay? And that's what Louis Elizondo does, okay? So don't believe what he says. There may be a granule of truth in some of the things he says, but more than half of it is complete BS. And there is no threat. If there was a threat, we wouldn't be talking right now. I would not be sat here talking to you. We'd all be gone years ago. Okay, they would have taken over the Earth, or perhaps they already have. Okay, so I'll leave that thought with you. And even some of the top people in NASA now saying that there's a UFO threat. Okay, well, if it's a threat now, why wasn't it a threat before? I mean, they've been around for a very long time. Okay, so take what they say with a pinch of salt. Where it looks like they're playing us here. They're trying to scare people for some reason. And some of the few articles I have had published, they often use them to try and scare people, like the Canon article, okay? Trying to turn it into some kind of threat for some reason. So we're being psyoped. Be aware of that. Just take a lot of what they say with a pinch of salt, because they're always trying to scare us with these things, okay? So thanks for watching, everybody. Please, like I said, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Please share on social media. That really helps. And like I said, go to the links below and check out all the other Gigapans I put up, because there's hundreds and hundreds of things here that I've got. And a lot of them go back years and years from the early days of my channel and prove that there was life on Mars, even back then, okay? So thanks for watching. I will see you soon.